Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to this episode of The Wisdom of, and my guest today is Klement Kralj. And I wanted Klement on the show because he's trying to innovate a market that, whilst we might not be in the market, we're all absolutely aware of the market. And this is a classic case of a new market that has been built on the thinking of an old market. And I'm specifically talking about electric vehicles and specifically EV charging. Klement comes from a background of engineering and design and innovation. He is the founder of Remea, the company that's bringing this solution to the marketplace. It's early stages, but it brings insights into what it takes to truly innovate a space that is new but being built on old principles. So, for example, the old principle used to be you went to a petrol station to fill up your car with petrol. And if you see all of the charging stations at shopping centres with rows of electric vehicle chargers, it's the same principle. Go to a charging station to fill up your battery. And I think one of the questions, Klement, that you're really challenging the EV industry with is that even the right model? Does it even work? Does the slot machine model work? Put your credit card in and pay to charge. Does that actually work, or are there other ways? And I'm really looking forward to a conversation about innovation, thinking, and also thinking about what you're trying to do to change an industry. So, Klement, welcome. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the conversation over the next little period of time.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for having me here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, we're sitting on opposite sides of the world. And so I'm in Perth in Western Australia, and you're in Austria. Think about even the possibility of doing this. 10 years ago, it wasn't an easy thing to do. So the world constantly changes in terms of the systems that come along. And I just wonder, what were some of the early signals for you that there was an urgent opportunity to tackle the intersection of electric vehicles and hospitality, productivity, et cetera, which we'll come to later, but that's really what you're trying to do. What were the early signals?
Well, basically, how it started, I first encountered with the EV still as a student. That was with a small BMW i3. That was, I think, already much more than 10 years ago, maybe 12 or 13 years ago. And at that time, I noticed how hard it was to charge, how limited it was, how the consumer or the driver was basically a slave of the technology. And then when I was still employed in automotive industry, I also been using electric vehicles, I noticed how market was changing. Then early adopters adopted EVs. But they're still, apart from Tesla, the charging infrastructure was a mess, and it was still mostly, let's say, utility companies or some basically like gas stations that added some chargers just on the top to kind of prove that they are green. But actually, the behavior was completely different, and people who were using EVs, they just wanted to kind of charge at the final destination, fast chargers in between, but fast charging was at that time very slow. And then I thought there'll be really opportunity with that destination charging, because any destination where people park their car could become a charging station, so to say, to refill. And basically every business that had electrical connection and parking spot could suddenly be offering charging. And that's going to be a big shift of how people are behaving in comparison to the gas car, right? When you go to the hotel, you didn't need a gas station at the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it's I remember talking to an Uber driver in Hawaii in an electric vehicle. I think it was a Tesla, and he was saying that he had to fit in a period of time during the day where he would just sit and wait while the car charged. And generally speaking, it wasn't at a location where he could do something. But what triggered this? What triggered this? Were you in that space? You as a student, you had a vehicle. How did you notice this? I think that's one of the things that people might want to hear about when an innovator comes up with something, was there anything that caused you to actually notice this or start the thought process?
Basically, the thought process, what I noticed is when I was part of the e-mobility society, and then I talked with the drivers, and all of them, they kind of mention, okay, they charge at home. Most of EV drivers that they try to charge at home,
Okay, yeah.
but when they need to charge when they're on the road, they said they would like to charge. Basically, they would not like to change their behavior. They would like to charge as a part of their destination. They would really like to charge at the locations that they go and have charging more integrated into their life. Basically, it's traveling, if it's work, it's free time. And I started noticing that. And and that's why we started developing the solution to enable easy monetization of chargers. And then we noticed that basically which companies were the early adopters, and the early adopters were a lot of time hotels.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So at the heart of this is systems thinking, actually. I mean, if we look at this through the lens of systems thinking, um, the current paradigm that most people are confronted with in terms of vehicle technology, the old car paradigm was, you had a car, you needed to get to this destination over here, but you had to go via a petrol station, in order to get there. At some point, you had to go via a petrol station. And then at some point, you had to find another petrol station if, in fact, you were doing, on a long trip, for example. If I've understood you correctly, you're basically saying you should be able to hop in your car, go go straight to your destination, whatever that is, and be refueled, in this case with electricity. And there shouldn't be anything in the middle that is required of you for that natural system to work on the right hand side, as opposed to an unnatural system on the left. This was driven by behavior, and this is driven by infrastructure. Is that a fair summary of what you're trying to capture?
Yeah, ideally that will be the case. Currently, it's still, the EV charging infrastructure is still not widely adopted. But the idea is, like you said, I will go to my final destination. In between, I'll use the fast chargers if this is necessary.
Yes.
But when I'm not traveling on long distances, wherever I go, let's say I'm now making a trip somewhere and I have appointment at a pizzeria and I'm meeting with someone at a pizzeria. Ideally, they will already have charger, and
Yep.
I'll just charge while I'm having that meeting. And that's our big vision, that really for mass EV adoption, the system thinking needs to change. It's not like I need to go to a place B, which is a charging station, like a gas station. I spend there half an hour waiting that my car is charged and I proceed. No, I have a charger at the location, at the destination where I'm already going.
Right. And so if we think about systems thinking, through the lens of business owners and things like that, one of the objectives of systems thinking is least amount of friction
Yes.
within the system. And so if we think about friction, there's a lot of friction within this system and much less within this one, even if it's supported by charging stations, should you need to, on either side. Is that reasonable assumption on my part? I mean, it's not my world, it's what you do. But if I just sort of summarize it in this way, does that make some sense?
Yes. I think you make a very good interpretation, and that's something that we are working towards in the industry.
Sure. So talk to me about systems thinking a little bit. I mean, you're a systems thinker, you're a systems engineer, and Remea is a software company, right? It's not an EV charging company. Um, but just outline a systems thinking approach, or outline the kind of thinking that has to occur when you want to tackle a problem like this from a systems, and particularly a large systems perspective. You're not just plucking out little pieces and saying, "We'll fix that bit,
No.
we'll fix that bit." It's so. What are some of the principles of systems thinking that might help other business leaders who are not systems thinkers, but we want to help them, get the bigger picture right?
Well, how I looked at it, and I'm not that professional as yourself, but I always try, and also how I was doing before, I think it's important to start at the requirements, at the first part. Basically, as a business owner, even a requirement is a very technical term, but if you put it in a more business term, you want to see what the market, what your users, what they want, what are their needs. And then you break that requirements down, like, and they can be a general requirements. Let's say they want to charge the car for 100 kilometers in 1 hour. They want to do that in their destination. They want to pay that. And then you break down that requirements in some more technical terms. And afterward, you start already based on that requirements, and you might have a requirements that then you will map. Are these requirements for hardware, for software, for the process? And you map them in an initial system design. So you start thinking how the system that needs to really fulfill that requirements might look like. And then you start to break down that system in parts. Of course, some of the, as a small company, you cannot be responsible for all, let's say, subsystems of that system. So yeah, let's say we say always, okay, charger is one part of the system that's already given. We cannot impact the EV charger, but we have certain protocol that we need to kind of do. We know how the chargers work. Also, the electrical grid in any country has certain characteristic that's given. We cannot change that. That's also part of a system. But what we have impact on as a company, we have the impact how we are putting that to our requirements together, how we're going to automate them, and that's then our software. And then we already, of course, at the next thing we need to test it, validate. Are we really first of all, are we fulfilling all the requirements? And second of all is then the whole system, like if we do, let's say, then validation, is the system behaving like we kind of hoped so? And in the last part, it comes to, we call that integration. For us, what's basically that? When we have, let's say, a new set of features, they need to be integrated with the charger. If we are doing also some energy management, they need to be integrated how we manage energy at the location. And then we came to the requirements, to the kind of final solution. And that's probably how, on a high level, I will go from it.
Yeah.
And of course, there are also many other high-level frameworks, like, I don't know, iceberg model and all of it, because of course, what you've seen some part of it, but some part of things are always hidden. And, you know, as a smart company, usually you have a lot of surprises, and then you need to react to them, for example.
Yeah. So if you think about the iceberg, which actually is a well-used model and a well-understood model, if you think about the iceberg, there's the known problem, which is the bit above the waterline. What is the known problem in EV? You've got to go somewhere to charge up, right? You physically got to drive the car to a charging station. You know, what is the hidden problem? Everybody knows that that problem exists. We're just not talking about it. And then what is the unknown problem? What's the thing that you can solve that other people didn't even think about or realize? What is the, you know, what are the hidden problems inside the EV industry, the EV charging industry, that we're not talking about? Like, we know you've got to go and charge a car, but what is it, the industry, you know, the hidden problems that exist that you found you have to tackle in order to even get to this deeper level of realization? I mean, is it who's controlling the charges? Who's controlling where you go? What are the hidden problems inside the industry that we need to tackle?
That point that you mentioned, who is controlling the charger, is quite good, because the industry was built like in a silos. So the big companies, they were thinking in the same way they were thinking in the oil industry. For example, okay, the hidden problem was, okay, you came to a charger. Let's say I'm in some country for first time, let's say Germany or the US, and then you want to charge, and you couldn't. You need a membership card, and you could not charge at the spot. You know, you needed to order the card, because they want to lock in users.
Yes.
But if I'm a first-time user when I'm traveling with EV, you know, I'm probably going to be there for some time, and then I'll never return. And that was one of the things. So the limitation to access the charger and start charging. The other hidden problem was also that cost transparency. That I was not even sure how much as a user I will pay for the charging. That also one of the kind of also hidden problems that you quickly noticed you were expecting some performance of the charger, but there was not enough electrical power there. So the charger was much slower and you lost time. And even that in the industry, it's called interoperability. It's that like the charger is not going to work with my type of the car. And these are all some of the hidden problems that are really known about among EV drivers that are better. But then there are even problems on the bottom layer, like and it's still quite tricky. And there are also a lot of unknown problems that could happen and are still hard to solve today.
Yeah. Often the problem is at the bottom of behavior. If we actually go back to what if I was selling what you do, for example, I'd probably be saying something like, we understand the EV charging industry well. You need to place infrastructure where it needs to be. You need to have the power supply to support it and everything else. But the reality is, this is systems thinking. The natural system is that people want to charge their electric vehicle in whatever location they end up in when they get there. And they don't want to have to go out to an external charging station. So what is the system solution that you can put in between that allows it to manage that? And I'm guessing that's what Remea is. It's a software platform that solves the connection issue between a man-made or a physical system, the charging infrastructure, and then connects it to the natural system, which is people want to charge where they happen to land in terms of the destination, and then still be able to manage it in terms of interoperability and all of those sorts of things. Is that a fair summary of this interplay between the physical system and the natural systems in play?
Yeah, yes. What we basically do, you have a charger.
Yep.
It's a physical hardware asset, right? And we enable that the business who has the charger can in an easy way offer that someone can use it. So how we have a charger, we have a QR code on it, which you scan. And then a web app opens on your mobile phone. So you get through a mobile phone, through again a digital system, you get access to the hardware system in a real world that is again going to impact a real system, again a hardware system, right? Your car.
Yes.
And in that way, we are doing that really intersection between, let's say, the hardware, software, the cloud, and the energy in the end.
Yes. And these could be hotels, gymnasiums, anywhere people go where they want to be able to charge the car in a seamless and easy way. So what were the challenges you had? Because when we think about that iceberg, it's like, who's controlling the charging infrastructure? What's the transparency of cost? Do we even have the power supply available? It sounds so easy to say you built a software solution, Remea, that could actually connect, the physical system to the natural system, which is human behavior. I want to be able to charge my car anywhere. What were some of the business challenges you faced as you start to get this? I mean, you basically bootstrapped it, but they don't seem like, I'm thinking about other people that start up a tech company. It seems to me a lot of the challenges are not really about software. They're about other things. And I'm sure there were. What are some of the real challenges you faced when you're trying to change an entire industry way of thinking about this?
Basically, yeah, it's a very good question. And it's I would say the mindset and the shift. Because let's say we notice that the market is shifting, that this opportunity, but the majority of people haven't. So let's say we build a product, like you quickly realize when you have a business, okay, building product is hard, but that's actually the easiest part. Then you need to bring that product to the market, and like everyone who is driven with a product, the people believe, yeah, my product is so good, the market will want it, everyone. And guess what? It doesn't work like that. No one cares. So you need to push your product to market. And for us, now it started happening, but I spent more than 2 years, like even convincing people that model could work. For example, we tried to sell that possibility to easily monetize the charger. And people were like, but how can I do that? And how can you help me? That's a market that is reserved for big players. You are not a big utility company. I'm not big company. So how are you selling me that? How can I even offer my charger with your platform to the market? It doesn't work like that. And they were like, no, of course it does. It can be, you just put software on it and then you can start offering charging. No, this is not legal. I mean, why not? Of course it is. It's a completely different model. So that was one of the challenges. Then second challenge was also, okay, you convince now the business to do that. And they feel they have now high expectations, but no one is coming because the charger is not visible. How to make charger visible? How to then make it visible to the end drivers that they could use it? It's the whole ecosystem. And also, when we were more in operation, we kind of realized that we thought we are going to be a software company. We are just going to sell software, but then we actually see now you need to provide some service on the top. You need to do a lot of customer support. Still, people are not all that used to use it. So there are then coming quite a lot of business challenges along the way.
Yeah, a lot of people think that, I'll just set up a software company and, write a program. You're trying to move people from, plug to the platform, plugging the car in, actually just use the platform and your car happens to be where you are. But there's all these other nuances underneath, political, legal. In every time a solution like this comes to market, and one of the ways that people could think about this as a startup is that when you bring a complex product to market that sits in between two things, and you're sitting in between infrastructure and electric vehicle owner behavior, right? And you're trying to put a platform in between. There's always someone who's on the money side of your product. Your product will help them make money. And there are people who are on the spend side of the product, the electric vehicle user who's going to spend into it. I'm guessing from the way you're talking, you had to make the sale to the people on the money side who would earn revenue out of it first. You had to get a business case up for them. Was that true in terms of your experience of it?
Yes, that was really true. So you first need to get the businesses, to get the chargers, to get the platform and start offering it. However, there was also a challenge because we are still in that early adopter phase. So there are a lot of the chargers are not being used as much as they should be. So you earn something, but it's still not very profitable business.
Yeah. What would you say to a startup founder, which will be based on not 10 years, something you did 10 years ago? It's, you're right in the thick of it. If you were giving someone who's about to start what they think is a software company, right, in whatever the thing is that they're going to do, they're going to build a platform that will be a bridge between a built system and the natural system, if we take systems thinking. And you were going to give them a 6-step guide. You're going to say, here's what I would do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, based on what I learned. And this is your chance to go back to your own journey and go, well, I do that differently, or I do this first, or I do. I know this question is without notice, but what would you be saying to that founder, that software founder who thinks they're building software, just do these things at least in order, or think about these things in order? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you start with probably like you're like always validating the market, validating the needs, validating what is needed. But that's just that one part. Then, of course, designing thinking how you will design the product. But I think a big, let's say, what I learned the hardware is really learn what kind of business you are going to be in, because people think now I'm going to be in a software business, I'm going to be in a food business, but actually the business you kind of being in, it's probably the if you break down the functions that your business is executing, the one that is taking the most time is probably the business you are going to be in. And also depending on the business model, we all know like how McDonald's is in real estate business, not actually in the fast food business. And the same is with any business, because you quickly might realize that sometimes you think you're in a software business, but actually you are your own customer. You build the software for, let's say, your own department, and the main business you're actually in, it's sales. I mean, every bit, or it's marketing, or it's, I don't know, it's actually a utility company. Or maybe you need to do all of this function by yourself, and then it gets quite challenging.
So what would you say the business is that Remea is in? I mean, it's primarily a software platform that sits between, you're building an EV ecosystem, but is, outside of being a software company, what is the real business then? Let's take a real example, your example. What's the business that you would say you're in?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and that's interesting when you're entering a new sector. And sometimes we had trouble with positioning. Even I was unsure, but now I'm now I mean pretty certain to answer that question. We are actually, I would say, we are in utility business because we are built our own software, but we are doing a utility function. We are monetizing and managing EV charger, which is basically like a utility. We have a subscription contract, like, it seems like software as a service, which they pay us,
Yes.
but actually it's a utility contract. They're like, the business, they're paying monthly costs for electricity for the charger, but they are paying also monthly cost for the service we provide. And okay, we take some commission
Yeah.
on top of that. But I would say, yeah, we are in utility business. An interesting point is the function that, let's say, my team, we are 4 people and me,
Yeah.
so together 5, but I have 3 people in sales and marketing. So basically, we need to do a lot of sales and a lot of marketing to push our product to the market.
Yeah. Most companies are actually marketing and sales companies first and foremost, and people forget that they're, the core functions of getting the right to participate in the marketplace in the first instance. You bootstrapped. It's a fairly capital intensive marketplace, software development. You can burn a lot of money in a hurry, creating software and platforms, but you bootstrapped. And, is there why did you take that route? Why did you decide to bootstrap instead of capital raising? And, for the bootstrappers, what are some of the lessons you picked up as you went along the way?
Basically, yeah, to answer your question, we were kind of forced into that. So we started, and we started doing a more that beside our job. So basically, working 9 to 5 and then working our thing. And then we got some angel investment, a small investment that enabled us to go, let's say, full time for a couple of months, really pushed. And then we were looking for more investment. But for that space, no VC actually was really interesting for EV charging because it seems like a long-term game. It's not 100x business. It's slow business. It seems a very capital-intense business. And okay, that happened. Then we ran out of money. Then my co-founder left when we ran out of money. So then I stayed. And I was like, no, there needs to be a way. And then we were just executing projects with the team, earning something. And then I always try to think, okay, what's my advantage to others? You have less capital, less resources, less people. So how can you even compete? And then we realized because what is your biggest disadvantage can also be your biggest advantage, right? So we were small, we were agile, we didn't have resources. But that was also an advantage. For example, we have some customers coming in and they wanted that on that feature, which was, not that big. It could be programmed in, let's say, 40 hours. But the big companies were not able to do that because they were using software from someone else. They had all these complex structures they need to align. And in order to do that, it will take them, I don't know, 1 year and it will cost them 150K. But we were able to do that for 2K in 2 weeks and really deliver that to the customer in 1 month. And that's how we slowly started bootstrapping. And it was not even with the hotels and that, but it was, for example, with a bit bigger companies who had their EV chargers and they needed some management in place. And then we were more flexible. And these were kind of the customers that help us also grow our commercial.
Okay, so there were intermediary customers that were not your original target,
Yes.
but they gave you the ability to actually get the business moving. Interesting.
Yes.
What let's go over to the dark side for a moment. Um, did you experience people actively trying to stop you or undo this or divert you away from it? Was there any invested interests in maintaining the current infrastructure driven environment? I mean, if this happens, if this happens, it has a big impact for a lot of for a lot of people in an industry, right, that are predicated on only having dedicated charging stations available. Was there any? Did you experience any, maybe not direct effort from people, but any push to try and throw you off course or actually resist this?
Yes, yes, unfortunately, yes. It's not been that easy. There were moments now we are a bit above water, but there were moments like even last year where I was unsure should I continue, and you start doubting a lot of things. And exactly what you said, there were a lot of people who either you are presenting, for example, the model to the utility company because they contact us, who it's kind of competitor, but not really, not in terms of software. And they were like literally, guys, this is the market for big players. It's very nice what you have done here, but use that experience and get a job. We are offering a lot of jobs. Take our job listings and join us. Or even we had also like when you get at the beginning it was that, but then when we got a bit bigger in the region, then we had like inspection, like a competitor kind of applied us to the inspection and then changed. We are really low compliant because especially in European Union, charging is highly regulated. You are not allowed to sell energy, and and there were quite a lot of moments like that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And had you taken any deliberate action to try and protect your IP? Because you can share an idea with someone who says, you're cute, you're a small player, this is an industry for big players. But we've also seen examples where then a great idea has been taken and commercialized, with enough capital put behind it. How, when you're developing an innovation, do you have the conversations with people that you need to have and then not actually give away the real heart of the innovation that allows somebody else to go, that's a good idea, we'll just do it ourselves?
Yeah, I think that depends on the industry, and it depends on what we are doing. What is my personal opinion, and the framework was not meant for that, but I like the Simon Sinek, this start with why.
Yeah.
Why you are doing it, how you are doing it, and then basically what are you doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. Okay, you can say why we are doing it, you say what, but you don't say exactly how. So to the end customer, they don't exactly need to know what is in place that performs that functions, but you can tell them all about it, because especially in this space, I mean, there are really industries, but because you're saying what you are doing, someone might figure out and kind of steal your IP. But the thing in software is, anyone who has enough resources could program them, but you can protect some algorithms. Maybe you protect your brand. You don't exactly tell about all the processes that you say in place. But what I'm actually in, when it's not like some kind of sensor or it's otherwise hard to protect, I would say.
Yeah, but also, of course, the business isn't really just about the software. It's about the user experience and the ecosystem you're creating around this. What do most people misunderstand about this transition to electric mobility? There's this interesting phrase, e-mobility, or term, e-mobility, electric mobility, and these transport devices need to be charged. There's a direct connection to productivity while you wait for them to be charged, as opposed to going to a petrol station, fill it up, and move on. Um, and then there's productivity layers around the charging itself. What are some of the things that you believe most people misunderstand around this whole e-mobility space that we're moving into? Because it's still relatively young and new.
Yeah, I think one of the first part, most people still are afraid of that range anxiety, because they are thinking in terms of old patterns. I have a car, I need to fuel it up, and then I drive 600
Yeah,
miles,
yeah.
1,000 kilometers, something. But they're not that's one thing. They're still not thinking that I can also charge. The technology now enables me to charge very fast. And also a part that they're thinking, because people were always calculating, I don't know, how much the gasoline cost. But with the EV charging, the price of the charging is usually dependent on two factors: location, where you charge, and time, when you charge. And when you combine time and location, you have these basically 2 degrees of freedom. They might be actually even more, where also the price of the charging, it can be very different. And that becomes especially important for fleet operators, because you can have even from 5 to maybe even to 10x differences in the how much does it cost to charge my car, depending when I'm charging and where. And if I plan that, it can change a lot in terms of my profitability.
It's interesting. What do they misunderstand? We've got this. I thought range anxiety was an interesting point. People don't really have battery anxiety over their mobile phones anymore. Everyone expects their phone will last all day and then you charge it up, right? No one's thinking, well, my phone has to last the whole week, and so I need to be near a charger, sort of thing, when it runs out. Whereas, the fuel driven cars created that distance anxiety or range anxiety, if you like. So it is a different way of thinking in terms of the industry. So if you were giving the next generation of founders beyond you, who want to operate inside climate tech or e-mobility or e-technology, and they were listening, what would is there any insights you'd share with them about building your solution, whatever it might be, well, as opposed to building fast? Because we have this tension, particularly in the technology space, the idea of the unicorn company, build it fast and have someone pay you $1 billion to take it off your hands, sort of thing. But it strikes me that you have to build what you're doing well for it to work for everybody. Otherwise, it won't work. Do you have any insights to share about build it well versus build it fast in this climate, e-technology, e-mobility space?
Yeah, that's very good analogy that you mentioned also with the unicorn companies, because I think that's also very important to kind of outline. Building any business, so it's hard. It's like extremely hard, and most businesses are not going to be unicorns, and it's really fine like that. And also most businesses, in order to get sold, it will take 10, 15 years, and then they're going to be sold for a fair amount, but not for like this fast, like you said, you build a unicorn, you execute fast, and you sell it for 500 million or billion. That's like a really, really, I think, an outlier, and that's really this boss scenario. So you go all or nothing. You build fast, you have a higher risk, but I think there's the opposite strategy, where you build slow. Like you said, you build on a good foundation. You will not kind of really move overnight. You will not have exponential growth, but you will have a slow growth, and you will also have, let's say, in terms of business and in terms of technology, less risk, because you don't have this, something doesn't work, one piece fails, and then the whole company collapses. No, nothing will happen. You lose a customer, okay, you lost a customer, and it's not like you made really big risk that you delivered in 1 year and then it doesn't work, a big customer cancels and the company goes bankrupt.
Yeah.
And
So
I think
go on.
no, go on, sorry.
Well, I hadn't thought about the connection that you just made, but increased speed of build probably does have a direct correlation to increased levels of risk. There'll be fewer fast feedback cycles in terms of test and correct, which is a key part of software development. And you almost go to market with minimum viable product in the interest of speed, and you could create some fairly poor market perception. And maybe you haven't built the relationships that need to exist underneath the platform. I would suspect that Remea requires a fair chunk of relationships sitting underneath the platform for it to work, like legitimate business to business relationship that needs to be formed, with hotel chains or whatever the case might be. What is there? Have you brought AI to bear in a significant way in this solution? Have you been using AI a lot in terms of what you're doing or not? I mean, the world's become obsessed with AI. Has that opened up the ability to do this in better ways than you would have imagined? And Are there any surprising efficiencies that you've discovered by using AI?
Yeah, basically what happened, I mean, I started using ChatGPT basically when it came out, but to the AI game, I was a bit late. Like maybe I started using it really very extensively in, let's say, last 12 to 6 months. And what I kind of realized, I had a good and, let's say, bad experience. The good, for example, experience was we still develop, I mean, we use the help of AI to develop software, but I started using some no coding tools like Replit. I really like Replit to kind of mock up the feature that, it seems like it's working, show it to the customer and try to get a feedback. For example, we had a customer that said we had some energy management in place, and they would like graphically make the curves how the car is charging the power. And we just mocked up the feature and they really loved it. And then they implemented it. And it could also be that they would, and we didn't spend development time. And where we kind of had a bit not that great experience, because in our industry everyone is talking about AI, smart EV charging,
Yeah.
smart, AI enhanced seamless EV charging session and energy management. And if you try that, you can of course connect some AI model, and it will kind of change the power of the charging.
Yeah.
But I've seen that, basically the model learns based on the data. And for some charges, you have better data. For some, you have worse. Here, if you have some basic functions that are manually written in terms of physics, they still perform maybe even better than AI. So I think, because especially in the utility business, when it comes to some basic physical laws, how you manage power, AI, it's just smart way to say, but of course, our marketing, we say we have AI enhanced features.
So strong modeling based on real principles of physics does deliver some better results in instances than the AI modeling might. That's an interesting concept. Who would have thought that some of the deep principles, apply, if you like? What I, I wonder about, has AI allowed you, you're a small company, does AI allow you to stay small and agile, but punch above your weight, play at a higher level? The large utility companies obviously are very large. Does AI give you the ability to have some advantage in terms of entering the space you're entering?
I believe so, because where we've been heavily using AI is, for example, in marketing, in sales, customer support. We used agents. And I think that's a very big or advantage, because compared, for example, if I compare Europe to US, Europe is heavily regulated.
Yes.
Because of the compliance, let's say some of our competitors, big companies, they're not allowed to use AI. They cannot use the AI tool that will be connected with their mailbox, their LinkedIn profile, and they'll automatically be writing emails for outreach. It's just not allowed. And we can do that. And that again gives advantage. Of,
Sure.
of course, like I mentioned, for the development, I still believe that you cannot automate the relationship and use AI to build the relationship with the customer, but you can use the AI bot to get you the first introductory meeting. So instead, I'll be manually writing the cold emails. I get the AI bot or AI tool to do that,
Yeah.
very personalized, and then I get a meeting.
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about AI when you talked about using the AI tools to create the modeling without actually writing the platform or the software. I hadn't thought about AI as a way of creating minimum viable product for demonstration purposes to a customer. That is an interesting, unexpected use of AI for me, in terms of something you've been doing with it. We'll show you what the modeling curve looks like in terms of charging, and have the client buy in on effectively what an end product looks like, as opposed to, well, we believe you, it sounds good, now go and prove it, kind of thing. Klement, it's the whole electric vehicle space is super interesting, and the idea of e-mobility and the e-mobility ecosystem. We are going to end up in a world where the electric vehicles that we move around in are actually just like the iPhones we carry in our pockets. They're just devices that we use to exist on a day-to-day basis in the natural rhythm of our lived system, if you like. And the challenges for people is to find those solutions that sit between the physical infrastructure world that supports that and human behavior that is much more organic and unpredictable, where we want to charge our vehicles wherever we are. You know, we want to be able to use them like we use our phone. We want them to be as accessible to us and useful to us, and never fail, never run out of charge. So it is an interesting thing that you're doing, creating this environment, attaching e-mobility and charging and range anxiety to destinations, hotels, gyms, whatever people are experiencing. I'd love to wrap up with 3 quick questions so people just find out a bit more about you. Rapid response questions, if you're okay with that.
Yes.
And so if you could instantly master any skill without practice, like I just click my fingers and you've got it, what would you like that skill to be, and why?
Instantly communication. I think the communication, I'm really working to improve my communication skills, and I believe now, especially in terms of AI, interpersonal communication, especially in B2B, it's the skill that is probably more important than any other skill.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, it's that's the world we live in, helping people that sell a complex solution to actually communicate that in a way so it just makes sense. If you make more sense than anybody else in the marketplace, people tend to buy from you. Is there a setback or a failure? It doesn't have to be to do with the business. It could be in any other aspect of life. Is there a setback or failure that taught you a really valuable lesson, and that significantly contributed to the path you're on? What was that setback, and what was the lesson?
I think the lesson is really when you're like really down in terms of financial, especially as a business owner, or down, not feeling well, then you realize who are your real friends and who are your real partners. Not when you're up, but when you're like really down.
Yeah, interesting. And then, if you could have invented anything in the world, what would you that already exists? What would you like to have been the inventor of?
Well, that's a good question. It's also, but I think that the best invention that we can, I mean, that's a very subjective, of course, but was probably Nikola Tesla and electricity, because the invention of his asynchronous generator enabled whole development of the semiconductors of the computer industry, electronic industry, telecommunications, and that.
Yeah, look, there's an interesting body of work about the importance of industrialization, and whilst that was huge, the world really leapt ahead through electrification. And the next step on from electrification is cognition, AI and everything else. But that's only possible because of electrification, right? And even e-mobility, they're all only possible because of electrification. It's an interesting thing. Klement Kralj, thank you very much for giving us this time and letting us get a little window into what you're trying to do in the kind of e-mobility, electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging industry, but also some of the insights that you've had as a startup founder, trying to do something completely different in a marketplace that might not be in the interests of all the major players in a market right now, or might not be in their interest for you to be successful at it as opposed to them. So I really appreciate you sharing some of those insights and taking the time with us this afternoon.
Thanks you for having me, and yeah, I look forward to see the episode out.
Well, the next time I hire an electric vehicle and turn up to a hotel and charging my car as a part of the room rate,
Yes.
I'll put it down to Remea. All right. Thank you very much, Klement.
Thank you. Bye.